Good morning, YouTube. This is Nina. And am I going to say that every time I start reading? Maybe. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump into chapter 2. I was just so excited about the Hiram art drop last night that I couldn't sleep. And I decided I'm going to read my chapter before I go work out. And then that way, maybe later on, I can read some more. So I'm going to adjust the lighting. Give me one second. I hope everybody's having a good day. I hope everybody goes over to Hiram Art and listens to the drop. I don't know what day he did it, but I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't sleep. I stayed up. I didn't have anybody to tell the drop to. So I waited till this morning. I called everyone that I've been talking to this about, and I'll make some more calls eventually. But anyway, we're on chapter 2. I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to go ahead and work out. The shrill cry of an owl was heard 3 times in rapid succession, and at the same time, one stealthily entered the outer room of the cot. With an agility marvelous in one so old, the aged Mordecai jumped off his seat, and hurrying to a corner of the room, he lifted a secret trapdoor. Nahum and Hiram fortunately understood the old man at once, and without waiting for an explanation, disappeared through the aperture, whereupon Mordecai replaced the door as if nothing had happened, quietly sat down, and resumed the reading of an old manuscript, from time to time examining some rare plants placed in an earthen vase on a rude deal table before him, an occupation in which he had been interrupted by the entrance of his nephews. Presently a knock was heard on the outer door of the cot, and before it could be repeated, a sleepy "Who's there?" uttered Lamech greeted the intruder. A hurried consultation between uncle and nephew. I'm trying to keep this steady, y'all. Between uncle and nephew followed, whereupon the door was opened, and the leader of the guard, who had led Hiram and his followers out of the city gate, entered, followed by 3 of his men. The glimmer of a light, which was to be seen through the chinks of the inner door, at once guided the visitor to the inner room, where he found the old man engaged with his plants and manuscript. "Rather late for work," was the soldier's greeting. "Better late than never," was the calm response. But resumed our hero of many battles, "it seems somewhat unusual to find a man of your age working at a time when everybody else is courting sleep. It would not seem so to thee if thou oftener didst leave the city limits at this time of night. Old Mordecai's time is too precious to be thrown away by much repose, or by much interruption either. So oblige me by stating to what I am indebted for this untimely visit, as I am just now engaged with some rare plants to be introduced into our gracious king's private garden." For a moment the soldier was taken aback by this coolness, but soon collecting himself, he said in a tone of severity, "The 2 Jews, Hiram, the king's head steward, and Nahum, the prime minister's head groom, were seen about an hour ago to leave the city in company with a lame beggar, and there is a strong suspicion of their being involved in a conspiracy to free their fellow Jews at any cost, even by assassinating our most gracious sovereign and his ministers, which was revealed to Shalmaneser not half an hour ago. I just now received a royal order not to allow any one to leave the city. Now the two very men thus suspected actually did pass the gate, which fact most naturally led us to the belief, a conviction, that the story there being really involved is true. And as you are known to be their friend, I have come to the conclusion that they must have come hither to ask, if not your cooperation, at least your counsel. And unless therefore you are able to give the most reliable proof to the contrary, I shall be under the necessity of taking you with me, together with your assistant, whom I strongly suspect to be more closely acquainted with the lame beggar than he may wish me to know. Here was a sad predicament for old Mordecai. How could he prove to the soldier's satisfaction that the men named had not called upon him? And furthermore, was there not every reason to suppose that Lamech had been recognized in spite of his disguise? To be taken by the guard would have been certain destruction, not only to them, but to all their friends. For suspicion once thrown into that channel, it was not at all unlikely that the habitation of Mordecai would soon be leveled excuse me, to the ground in quest of the fugitives, and then the entrance to the subterranean chambers would surely not escape detection, thereby frustrating their last hopes and rendering worse than vain the labor of years. All this at once flashed upon the mind of the old man, and although usually calm and brave, he was for the moment confounded. But soon he rallied, and throwing himself, utter despair depicted in his countenance, at the captain's feet, he confessed all, and imploring the soldier's mercy for himself and Lamech, he promised to show the retreat of his nephews. It was a bold game the old Jew played, but here was an emergency, and all must be risked, or all would be lost. Lamech was thunderstruck. Would he, the brave, the good Mordecai, really betray his friends? It passed all comprehension. But this terrible doubt was to last only one moment, for an instant after, on raising his eyes, he met the glance of the old gardener, a glance so full of meaning, so full of confidence, that all his misgivings fled at once, and uniting his lamentations and implorings for mercy with those of his uncle, they both succeeded in making the guardsmen believe in their sincerity, to such extent that the leader kindly promised them all the assistance in his power if he should only find those he was after. On the trapdoor being raised a second time, the captain of the guard, whose name was Barak, rushed past the old man, followed by all his men, and such were their impetuosity and haste to capture the two most hated of all the Israelites, who had succeeded in obtaining the most responsible as well as the most confidential situations in the households of the two most powerful men in all Assyria, under circumstances which, to say the least, looked suspicious enough to hurl them from their high positions, that fortunately for Mordecai and his friends, they never thought of securing a safe retreat, nor did they heed a shrill whistle sounded by Lamech, who followed on their heels. Arrived at a point where the light from above failed to penetrate, Barak found himself and followers enveloped in utter darkness. At the same time, the trapdoor again creaked in its hinges, and with a dull sound fell back in its place, thus burying the four guardsmen in the bowels of the earth. Presently, the faint glimmer of a light appeared in the distance, and with an ejaculation of wild joy, The captain bounded forward, for he had recognized the person of our friend Hiram, and brandishing his cutlass, he ordered his followers to secure the Jewish dogs at once. But his joy and exultation were destined to be of short duration, for on nearing the place where Hiram stood, torch in hand, beheld Nahum armed with sword and shield at the head of a company of armed men, while at his back the frightened cries of his followers told him that they were overthrown and now being secured by another party. The bravado of the soldier at once took to his heels, and sinking on his knees, he in turn now implored the mercy of old Mordecai, who had just joined his friends. In a few words, the old man informed his nephews how matters stood and why he had thought it was best to pursue the course he had taken. When Nahum, who had been attentive listener after commending what his uncle had done, confronted the prostrate Barak, and with the air of a ruler commanded him to arise. Trembling in all his limbs, the captain arose and stood before the royal Nahum, as stands the wretched criminal before his stern judge, awaiting his last earthly sentence. "Who sent you hither?" Nahum asked in a deep, solemn tone. No answer. "Were you sent?" Still no answer. "I know you," Nahum continued. "I know that you were not sent. As true as my God lives, we never were engaged in any conspiracy, whatever, least of all against the lives of our masters, and our masters know it. They did not send you, but we have enemies, cruel, unrelenting enemies, who will not hesitate at anything to destroy us. You are one of those. You are the kinsman of Amalek, the arch traitor, who would have embrued his hands in the blood of his sovereign. But for my friend Hiram, who happily discovered and frustrated the hellish design, twice have you sued for the position in Almazer's household which I occupy, and twice you were disappointed. Cause enough for one like you for revenge, deadly revenge. So you swore to destroy us, and I know that had it not been for the royal passport, you would not have assassinated us in front of the guardhouse. But you feared the just wrath of your king, which would surely have overtaken you had he found his royal will set at naught. You therefore thought to work out your fell purpose surer and better by following us hither and slaying not only us but also those here who never harmed you, that it might seem as though we had fallen victims to the unjust wrath of thy countrymen like so many before us. But for once you have been grievously mistaken. You are in our power now. And although we disdain to take the life of such as you, still a regard for the safety of these, of whom one is worth more than hundreds of you, compels us to keep you until you can harm us no more. Before co-signing you to your temporary prison, however, I would first hear all thou knowest concerning us and those we love, for well am I aware that it is you above all who are in possession of more secrets concerning the court and its surrounding than any other man in Nineveh. Speak, therefore, if thou valuest whole limbs, for by the living God of my fathers, I will have thee tortured until the torn fragments of thy polluted carcass strew the ground, if you conceal or disguise aught of what you know. And I guess that's any of what you know. Now with this, Nahum made a sign to some of his followers, whereupon 4 stout men brought forth a rude bench covered with nails and screws of peculiar workmanship. At the sight of this contrivance, poor Barak again fell on his face fell on his knees. My apologies. "Oh, have mercy," he cried in the most supplicating tone. "Spare me. Do not torture me. I dare not disclose anything, for I am bound to secrecy by the most solemn oath." But Nahum was inflexible. "What is your oath?" he said. "It is not sworn by the only living God, whom you do not acknowledge, and all other swearing is but profanation. Profanation. Yet fain would I leave thee, for I do not like to make you break your word in addition to your other sins. But the holiest interests of a nation demand that we should know all, and therefore executioners do your work." The wretched captain felt himself lifted up by stout arms and thrown over the bench of the sharp nails and screws. His feet were then thrust between two logs of wood, on each end of which were two screws, which the executioners began to tighten. Slowly the stout logs were drawn together, yet with some fortitude the soldier endured his pains, but the men continued their labor. Nearer and nearer the logs came together until human nature could hold out no longer, and with the last effort Barak cried out, "Stop, I will confess." The screws were at once loosened. The almost flattened legs of the unfortunate man bathed in cold water, and every effort was made to lessen the almost unendurable pain. Barak had fainted, but after an hour of assiduous labor, he opened his eyes, and consciousness returned. At sight the torturing machine, he shuddered, and at once signified his intention to confess all he knew. "I am," he condemned, "as you know, the captain of the city guard, but attained that post only through the intercession of some powerful friends and relations, chief of whom was my kinsman Amalek, then first chamberlain of Shalmaneser. Before the capture of the Israelites, Shalmaneser was all we, his subjects, could wish him to be. He was in truth the father of his country. But after the destruction of Samaria, and when the captives had been brought to our city, our king one day met a maiden of your nation, and so smitten was he with her charms that forthwith his whole nature became changed. He only lived in the smiles of his beloved Abby, and not only was her every wish gratified, but from that day Shalmaneser began to prefer Israelites to his own Assyrians, and more than one hint was thrown out that he even forsook the gods of our fathers and turned to the religion of the despised Jews. Excuse me, sorry. Then it was that the king lost the love and confidence of his subjects. And on you, Hiram, being raised to the high positions you now occupy, the former love was turned into intense hatred. Conspiracies against the once worshipped ruler were formed nearly every week, and the most prominent one, though that of the two head chamberlains, would have succeeded beyond all doubt, but for interference of Hiram. From the first, I was chosen by the disaffected people to ferret out all the secrets of the court and its immediate surroundings, and to spread the discontent as far as I could. My office as captain of the guard brought me in constant intercourse with the officers of the king's and his ministers' households, and thus I was enabled to render many valuable services to my employers. I was not long in finding out the esteem in which your friend and you were held by your masters, and after the explosion of the last conspiracy, and the subsequent execution of my friend and kinsman, I resolved to have you destroyed first, and this very night was to witness your final doom. When I saw you leave the city an hour ago, I would at once have detained and delivered you to your executioners, but I dared not. As yet Shalmaneser is our king, and it might have cost my head had it been found out that Hiram had been slain or captured in spite of his having shown me his passport. And as the porter then on duty at the eastern gate is known to be a staunch adherent of the royal house, my detection would have been certain. But I did the next best thing in my power. I dispatched one of my men to follow you, and from him I learned 15 minutes later where you had gone. Half an hour afterwards, I was relieved by one of my lieutenants, and then without delay I selected the two best of my men in addition to the one who followed you, and without even hinting where I was going, I at once turned my steps hitherward. This is what I know concerning you, but that is not all. I know one more thing. You asked me concerning those whom you loved, and whom should you love but Hermon? Ah, cried Nahum eagerly. Of what Hermon? Speak, and not a hair on your head shall be harmed if you tell me truly. The king's daughter loves you most sincerely, Barak continued. When she first beheld you at work in one of the gardens, Almanzor, she was smitten with your manly beauty, but more so with the undaunted courage with which she saw you bear your humble lot. After she had learned what and who you were, ah, she cried, I knew he was royal, but none but a descendant of royalty is capable of fortitude so noble. Y'all bear with me. When I first wake up, I'm thrown off a little. And from that day, her heart has been yours. Through her intercession, you soon rose to the office of head groom, and it has long since ceased to be a secret in both households that she will wed none but you. Her father's cousin, Abimelech, a young man of rank and princely fortune, had hitherto considered himself the destined husband of the maiden, and on his becoming acquainted with the state of affairs, his rage knew no bounds. He would have slain you with his own hands had he dared. He tried the next thing. He asked Almanzor to discharge you from your high position. But here too he was disappointed, for the resolution of Hermon was no secret to her father, and he loved his child too well to allow a humiliation so public to be inflicted on the innocent object of her most affectionate regards. Abimelech then sought me, and holding out a really princely reward, easily succeeded in making me the tool with which to rid the earth of his hated rival. Of the interviews you had with the lovely Hermon, and which she contrived to give you with all the ingenuity of her sex, I need hardly speak, but of many a one have I been a concealed witness, ready to plunge the steel into your heart should a sure chance offer. You are alive, the best proof that such a chance never offered, and that it did not in owing the watchful care of Hermon, who suspected her cousin's design from the first. Toward you her heart remains unchanged, but whether you will ever be so fortunate as to call her your own remains to be seen. As all the people and particularly the nobles, are strenuously opposed to the match, and the king, as you know, has lost too much of his power to dare anything against the people's will. Thus far went Barek's revelation, and Nahum knew it to be true in all essential points, a fact of which the captain seems to have been well aware, as else it would appear most surprising that he should have spoken so openly in detail. Okay, y'all, so that's chapter 2 of the Lost Tribes of Israel, and I will pick up on chapter 3 either later on today or later on tonight. Thank you for listening. Peace, brothers and sisters.